Have you ever wondered what it's like to dine with Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack? Join us as we explore Frank's Place, Panama's must-visit Italian restaurant that pays homage to Frank Sinatra and his iconic crew, as well as the owner's Italian-American grandfather, Frank Santomeno. From classic Italian dishes with a twist to a nostalgic ambiance straight out of the past, Frank's Place offers a unique dining experience you won't find anywhere else. Meet the sommelier, Angelos Journey, and discover why this hot spot is the talk of the town. Don't miss out on this culinary journey through time. Welcome to the Panama Podcast, From Dreaming to Doing. I'm your host, Melissa Darnay, an American who's been living her someday, every day since 2012. Get ready for a weekly dose of Panama sunshine and inspiration, from hilarious expat adventures to insider tips on living, investing, and having a blast in Panama. Curious to learn more? Go to choosepanama.com and snag your free copy of Panama Uncorked. With me today is Angelos Journey, sommelier at Frank's Place, one of my favorite restaurants in Panama. Angelo, thank you so much for joining us and for inviting us to Frank's Place. What a great treat for us today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
My first question I ask everyone is, why Panama?
Okay, why Panama? Well, seeing as I was born here, that makes it kind of easy, but I haven't always lived here. I left for a few years, then came back. Why Panama? Well, tell you the truth, on my days off, a lot of times I wake up and I wonder, what am I going to do today? And here in this country, I can jump in my car, drive 45 minutes, be in the Caribbean Ocean, go to a little place called Isla Grande that I've been going to since I was, 3. And believe it or not, there's an old man named Oscar there who's a big, giant Elvis Presley fan. And once upon a time when we used to go when I was 3, he lived in a little wooden hut, probably 6 by 6. It was just pieces of wood put together. But inside he had Elvis posters, Elvis tapes, Elvis 8-tracks and all that. And it was his thing. So now he's got a 4-bedroom house. That's a whole different, he's become the representative of Isla Grande and things went well. But little things like that were important to me in my childhood. Nowadays, I also wake up. Sometimes I want to go to Toboga. I go into the Cerrito Tropical. I've got a friend named Cynthia Mulder who's got a little place there. I stay there.
And Toboga is an island in the Pacific side.
Correct. So it's either Caribbean or Pacific, and I have both options. I can wake up in 1 hour, be in an island in the Pacific, an island in the Caribbean, and it's fun. It's just good stuff. Did you know that Pizarro, the guy who took down the Inca Empire, also had a house on Toboga?
I did not know that.
Now we all do.
Yeah, Toboga is only about a 30-minute ferry ride from Panama City, so it is very close. You can go and come back the same day. A nice little mini vacation.
The best part about it for me is it's only a $7 ferry ride.
Why is it $7?
That's what it costs to get there on the Calypso, $7. That's nothing.
That's what it costs to ride the subway in New York, right?
Well, here it's 35 cents for the subway.
Okay. How long ago I know you grew up here.
Yes.
And then you moved to the United States. Tell me about that journey of leaving Panama, going to the U.S., and then how old you were when you came back.
I was about 18 when I left. I went to college in South Carolina. I was in the South Carolina National Guard for several years, many years actually. Lived all over Texas. Very fun. Loved Texas. Lived in Florida because we've always had a house in Florida. So my summer vacations from Panama, we always would go to Florida. So I knew a lot of people there too. And sincerely, good times, very good times. Is it the transition very hard? Not really, because I grew up with an American father. So I've celebrated Thanksgiving. I've celebrated all those holidays. My culture, even though growing up here in Panama, wasn't really that much different than the culture in the United States.
And I know you were in the restaurant industry in Dallas. Tell us about that.
Well, I was in the restaurant industry in Florida and Dallas, but most of the time in Dallas and all around Texas because there was a little restaurant called Fish City Grill. And I used to work at about 7 Fish City Grills, and there weren't 7 Fish City Grills in one city. So I would be like Pearland to Arlington to North Dallas to Houston to Sugar Land. So I got to see a lot of Texas, and I have a lot of family living in Texas, a sister in Plano, a sister in Austin, a mother in Sugar Land. So I got to see a lot. I got to see a lot of the fine dining because, in smaller towns, you don't get the type of fine dining you do in big cities like Dallas or Houston. So I got to see a lot of that. I got to learn why it was, really important to learn a lot about wine and how wine was so crucial with food.
And it was so fun for me coming to Panama and meeting this such a charming sommelier and realizing that he lived in the same city I did, probably about the same time that I did.
Yeah. Yes.
What's been the most challenging thing as both of an American and a Panamanian about coming back to Panama full time?
Is it wonderful? It's wonderful. Challenging? Well, most of the places that I grew up and saw, a lot of people don't live in now. They've become kind of abandoned, like Fort Sherman, like Gatun, like Davis, stuff like that. So seeing how the opportunity the government had with all of these ex-military bases and all that, with all the housing, they didn't give it away to the people. They let it go to ruin. I think if they should have just, instead of letting it ruin, you should have just given it away. That's tough. That was tough to see. To see people making decisions like that. Like, I'll sell it to you, but if you're not going to buy it, I'd rather see it go to nothing. That was tough. But, the truth is, Panama's still beautiful. Panama's still the same Panama it was when I was young, and it's still a wonderful, wonderful place.
How about any day-to-day challenges of living here after having lived in America?
Well, I would say the subway's easier to take, so that's not a day-to-day challenge.
The subway is easier to take here.
Much easier to take here, yeah. It's much, much easier. Very clean also. Very consistent, always on time. So that's not a challenge. Traffic, well, if you've lived in Houston, traffic isn't a challenge either. It's a challenge there.
Right.
Cost of living, I mean, it's good here. I mean, really the
cost of living is great here.
Yeah. I can't really, myself being from here, I don't see it as a challenge moving from there back here. It's not uncomfortable and it's not hard. It was easy. It was an easy move.
An easy move because you had roots here.
Well, perhaps because I have roots here, but it's probably an easy move for you too.
I got to tell you, I had a harder time moving from California to Dallas, Texas, than I did moving from Dallas, Texas to Panama City, Panama.
Wow.
So I think that says a lot about how easy it is to live here.
Yeah. And if you ask anybody who's an expat, I mean, they all love it. Absolutely love it. I love it.
So what is your favorite thing about living back in Panama?
Okay. My favorite thing about living back in Panama is once upon a time, when I was young, there's a river called the Chagres, which everybody that lives in Panama knows what the Chagres is. It fills the canal. Okay? Well,
the Panama Canal,
the Panama
of course.
Canal, yes, of course. Yeah, well, where the Chagres touches the Caribbean is a little place called San Lorenzo. Well, over there, when I was a kid, we used to fish, and we would take little tiny metal loops about this thick or that big, but very thin metal, and make long chains with heavy weights on the bottom. And we would stick the poles with the chains into the water at night, of course, and then we put lights above them. Every fish about this size would get stuck inside of those little tiny loops. We'd pull them up, chop them up, and go fishing for bigger fish. So things like that, and knowing when there's mango season, when is avocado season, and those kinds of things, because I'm from here, that's very, very fun. That's really, really cool. And I can still do those things now today.
Absolutely. And mango season, talk about one of my favorite times of year. I love mangoes, and there's no place in the U.S. where you can get mangoes like you can in Panama.
Yeah, what's funny is, to me as a kid, mango was a mango. But now as an adult, there's like 80 different types of mangoes. Who knew?
Let's talk a little bit more about the cost of living. You touched on it, but how is it different living in the U.S. to living in Panama, dollar for dollar, day by day?
Okay, well, here's the facts. If you make $50,000 a year in the United States, you can't live on an oceanfront apartment in Miami.
Nowhere.
That's just not
nowhere in the U.S.
Nowhere. Well, here you can. I mean, you can get an oceanfront apartment from $120,000 to $250,000. The apartment on the oceanfront, where the ocean breeze hits you every morning when you open your windows. You don't have to be rich to live on the oceanfront here.
That is such a great analogy. You don't have to be rich to live on the ocean. I've done so many blogs about what it costs and carrying costs to live on the ocean in the United States. So, for example, Miami, because they are in the hurricane area, insurance costs so much, which means the HOA costs a lot. And here, because we have no natural disasters, HOA and insurance are dirt cheap. For example, insurance is about 0.1%. So if you buy a $250,000 condo right on the ocean, you're going to spend about $250 per year in fire and structure insurance, which is crazy. I have a friend who has an apartment in Miami with a worse view than I have, and he pays $6,000 a month just in HOA, property taxes, and insurance. And me having the same size of apartment with a better view, I'm under $1,000, I'm about $750
Wow.
a month in carrying costs. So it is a little crazy.
And you know what? The truth is, here in Panama, we're still growing. There's still a lot of places that there's no electricity, no water that gets to. You buy an oceanfront property there, and then
It's really cheap.
And not only is it really cheap, but 4 years from now, it becomes really expensive, and you own it.
Exactly. One of the things that surprised me when I moved here was when you go to the Caribbean, a lot of people are like, oh, the Caribbean's so much prettier than the Pacific. Agreed, it is. But you don't have the infrastructure on the Caribbean side of Panama like you do on the Pacific side. So you can get things very inexpensive there. However, you may not have that infrastructure. Your internet's not going to be as fast. You may not have as stable electricity and gas
Water also.
and water.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to kind of put up with a little bit of inconvenience, it can be very, very cheap. But on the Pacific side, we have no problems with stability
You can even
and
drink
infrastructure.
you can even drink the water in the city, no problem at all. The water's fine. But back to the Caribbean thing. I will tell you though, if you're willing to every once in a while, maybe my water went out, maybe my cable isn't working so well, but if that's okay to see crystal clear water, beautiful, drink coconut juice every day and hang out on a beach, if you can deal with that, I think the pros and the cons. I'm personally, I like the Caribbean.
Especially if you don't need to work for a living. If
Yeah.
you're retired, you've got your money coming in. A little bit of money goes a long ways on the Caribbean side.
It really does. It really does.
But if you don't want to live with that, you can still vacation with that, which is really nice. I want to know, because you're a funny guy, and I mean funny in a positive way, not like, oh, you're funny.
Not funny looking.
You're a funny guy. I always laugh when I'm with you. What's the funniest thing that's happened to you since you've moved back to Panama?
Funny, and we just talk about laughing. I understand. You probably would like something humorous, but I'm going to tell you something that I really considered kind of funny when I moved back, okay? And again, I don't lean towards any type of religious group or anything like that. I believe there's a creator, and that's as far as I'm willing to go with that. But I will tell you, when the Pope was here, there were Russian and American flags walking hand in hand, Arab and Jewish flags walking hand in hand. It's like everything could go, and there was no, oh, you're this or you're that or you're a Jew or it was everybody in the same country at the same time. And Poland sent all their doctors over here to provide medical aid for anything that might have happened while he was here. That was funny, because where else in the world can everybody from everywhere in the world get along? This is it.
But funny, beautiful.
Funny, beautiful, yeah. Beautiful.
I've also seen some protests in Panama where you have 10,000 people on a street singing and holding hands, and there's no violence. To me, that's very beautiful, because Panamanians have the right to protest just like anyone else does. But unlike my country, where a lot of times protests do turn violent, the protests here turn into singing.
Yeah, well, you're right, because we protest a lot. So if we were violent protesters every time, this wouldn't be a good country. So yeah, since we protest a lot, it's easy to protest. Nobody's going to hit you with a billy club or anything like that. We are a peaceful people. Violent crimes are nothing that, it's just nothing that's really acceptable here, nothing that you see here much. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. A pickpocket here and there probably happens.
Right.
Happens everywhere.
Crimes of opportunity.
Yeah, but it is not a violent crime place. So you're absolutely right about that. I feel safe. I walk around at night and I have no problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
You talked about doctors coming over from Europe, and I want to talk about healthcare, because that's on everybody's minds these days. Do you have any healthcare stories, either about yourself or somebody that can shed the light on healthcare in Panama?
Well, my father's American. He uses American insurance. It all works here. My mother lives in Sugar Land, Texas. She uses American insurance, different than my father's. They all work here too. So I'm wondering, what insurance company doesn't work in Panama? I think they all do. So keeping your own insurance even works when you come here. And the fact is, we also have hospitals and Social Security for local people. But if you don't want to sit in line for an hour, you can just go to a private doctor, and it's affordable. It's like $35 just to see a private doctor. So and they're everywhere. So health insurance, yeah, I mean, it's easy.
One of my friends was talking about 2 podcasts ago how he broke his arm and had to go to the public hospital and spent a whopping $12.50. To me, I like to have the concierge medicine. I'd rather spend $35 or $100 to get my arm set in a private hospital. But the cost here, it's not a big difference between the public and the private.
No, it's really not. I mean, 35 was what I was going to a private doctor. 35 is nothing.
That's nothing, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people, because of that, a lot of expats specifically are self-insured because it is so inexpensive. Although you can get health care here that is also very inexpensive.
Fact.
Angelo, you're the sommelier of Frank's Place restaurant. Again, may I mention it's one of my favorite restaurants.
Thank you.
Please talk about your journey here to this restaurant at this time.
Well, actually, to this restaurant, I've actually worked at Frank's before. And Frank's was actually born out of a small pub called The Wallace. The Wallace was my boss's first restaurant. His name is Robert Santomeno. And it's a little pub, Scottish pub, excellent place. I strongly recommend it. Well, his grandfather, whose name is Frank, whose Frank's is named after, actually was the first person to bring cable TV to Panama. He actually also in 1975 founded a jewelry store named Reprosa that replicates pre-Columbian jewelry authorized by the government. And so they did well here. And he had a dream before Robert was born to open a restaurant named Frank's. Well, it turns out his grandson opened the restaurant for him. And here it is. And it's quite a journey getting here, because we tried it first in Costa del Este in a plaza full of little pubs and bars where young people went to, and it really wasn't our target. So we moved to O Barrio, where there's more of an older crowd, not old, just older. And we've actually feel like we hit gold here. And we know a lot of people in our community because the Wallace is also in O Barrio. And that's part of our plan. We don't just want to sell food. We want to build relationships with our community. We want to be in the hospitality industry as opposed to the restaurant industry. It is our belief that restaurants come and go. But if you're really hospitable, you're the one that stays.
Absolutely. And a couple of things that I personally like about this restaurant, it's named after his grandfather, but I feel like it's also an homage to Frank Sinatra, because when you go out into the main dining room, there's all these sort of old-fashioned pictures that are very Rat Pack-esque.
Fact.
And it's Italian, which of course was Frank Sinatra's favorite.
Correct.
So when I tell people Frank's Place, even though I know the story, I always think it's Frank Sinatra, who's one of my favorite singers.
And the fact is, I'm not going to lie to you. When we first put all the Sinatra music and all the music from that era, I was like, I wasn't too sure. But now it's wonderful. We take people back to a different era.
That's
with
right.
Music from a different era, and we try to give that style of service, the style of uniform, the way we dress with the suspenders and all that. But you're right, a lot of Frank Sinatra, which brings, in my opinion, a certain type of class to Panama, which is good. We like that. We want to take you back to that place. We want to give you that type of old school perfect service, and it is part of our concept. And you're right, Frank Santomeno is the reason, but Frank Sinatra is the sound.
I was so fortunate to be able to spend my birthday in your kitchen. They don't usually do cooking classes, but again, as part of the community, we asked. It took them a little while, but they said yes. So we got a private cooking class, which was so much fun. What do you think makes the food here so spectacular?
Okay, we can do this. I'll do this my way. I'll say what I
do it my
and that
way.
is the word. We do it our way. You're not going to go to an authentic Italian restaurant and find our food on that menu. But you're going to find a whole bunch of Italian seasoning and spices in our food, because we lean towards Italian food, but it's more like in our hemisphere, American Italian, Panamanian Italian. It's a fusion of the way we eat our Italian. Mm-hmm. So what's special is we do it our way. I mean, we have a nice, delicious apple pie with homemade vanilla ice cream. They probably don't serve
so good.
And they probably don't serve that in Italy. But the fact is, and we have a lot of Panamanians cooking this food back there, which again, to me, makes it very special. We're not just bringing people to a different era of the United States with Frank Sinatra, Prohibition, and old school stuff. We're doing that with Panamanians making that food, serving that food, and being there face to face with you, making it our way and our thing.
My favorite dish is the linguine with house-made sausage. What's your favorite dish?
The only reason why you're saying that is because I told you that was my favorite dish and I recommended it to you. But okay, if you want me to pick a different one, I'll pick a different one. But that's also my favorite dish.
Okay, so what's your second favorite?
My second favorite, because I'm a carnivore, would have to be the entraña, which is like our skirt beef. Why?
Skirt steak.
It is skirt steak. Well, all of our beef is certified Black Angus, and all comes from, Texas. Uh-huh. So being used to eating American meat, you can come here and eat the same quality soft meat. I'm not saying that national beef is bad. It's actually very good for you because they're grass-fed cows, but it's a little bit tougher. And if you're used to nice, soft, tender meat that's aged 35, 40 days, this is the place.
Full stop. This is the place.
Yeah.
We're currently in your Speakeasy, and this was just finished a little bit ago. Can you tell us how this room came about?
Well, once again, when Frank Santomeno moved to Panama 60s, when he was young, was probably 40s, and that was that kind of, the 20s,
era.
30s, 40s was that era. Frank Sinatra, Prohibition, whiskey from Canada, all that. So to bring you back to that place, we try to recreate a little bit of that era. And again, that's what people did when they wanted to relax from the stress of life, all the government changes and all that. They would go to a little speakeasy, and that's where they would just let loose because it was closed. It was something private. And that's what this is. This is closed up. It's private. And of course, we got pictures of John Gotti, Lucky Luciano, Al Capone around the area, but that's all goes with the concept. And we figure we're not just to place good food, we also have a concept that we bring you to, and this is part of it.
And I love the idea of the neighborhood restaurant. Angela was telling me that you have a birthday party in here tonight for 25 people.
I do.
And you also have a wine dinner for 40 people out in the main dining room.
We do.
You do a lot of wine events. What led you personally into wine?
Okay, personally into wine, because I'll tell you, being a little boy from Colón, I did not drink wine. But I'll also tell you, all of a sudden, now I drink wine almost every day. Not that I'm a drunk. I just really enjoy it. The fact is, it's natural. It's probably the oldest alcoholic beverage that exists because fruit would ferment on its own with or without our help. And, the history of wine is the history of man. If you talk about first civilization, then we would talk about Samaria, right? Between the Euphrates and the Tigris. Okay, well, the wine coming from Georgia went down the Euphrates to Samaria, from Samaria to Egypt, from Egypt to Spain. So as population and we as ourselves grew, came out of the Neolithic era and all that, wine went everywhere we went with us. When the Spaniards came to the Americas in 1492, it was a law by King Carlos of Spain that they bring great, little wine sprouts so they can plant wine. It's just where humanity goes, wine goes. And it's our history. Wine is our history.
One of the very first times I met Angelo, he asked if we needed help with wine, with picking a wine. And I said, I have an advanced degree in wine, so no thank you. And he goes, I bet you I know things about wine that you don't know. And it became this personal challenge. And he's right, he does. I've learned so much from you.
Well, it's history. It's the history of wine that I know, like who the parent grape of the Malbec is, when the Tempranillo first was discovered, which was 850 AD. What was the first Spanish grape to make it to the Americas? Things that don't normally get taught in sommelier classes are the things that really interest me. Why? I don't know.
Let's switch gears for a minute. What is the best part about running a restaurant?
Okay. This is very simple. This is a very easy answer. The best part and the most satisfying part is to see you come back. If you did not come back, I have failed. And
That's
that goes for
wonderful. I love
everybody.
that.
The goal is that everybody we see comes back. If everybody we see does not come back, we are doing something wrong. The point is not to get you to spend a bunch of money here and see what I can get out of you. That's not how we do it. We're in the hospitality industry. We're hospitable. We want you to be very happy, very satisfied, and see you in about 3 days.
That's right. See you tomorrow. See you next week.
That's our goal. Our goal is you. You're our goal. Your smile, your satisfaction, and you.
What is the hardest part about being in the restaurant industry?
Well, honestly, everybody complain. Someone's always going to complain about something. And that's just the way it is. Well, when you put everything you have into something, and that's me, the chef, the servers, the bartenders, owners. You put everything your feelings, your energy, your time into something, and somebody says, "Well, I think it's crap. I think you should close the doors, fire everybody, rehire," because it's happened. It's happened. Rehire and start over. And, it kind of hurts your feelings a little bit. And you think to yourself, "Well, I'm doing the best I can for you, man." So that's the hard part. The hard part is accepting a lot of the criticism, although we take all the criticism and always try to grow on it. Sometimes it hurts you a little bit.
Sure, it does, especially like you said, when you're trying so hard. I bet you've met a lot of really interesting people throughout the years.
Yeah, I've sang karaoke with Shaquille O'Neal. I've I waited on this guy who was bald once, and I told him that he would look like Jerry Rice if he had braids, because Jerry Rice retired with braids, and it was Jerry Rice. You know, just little things like that. Just throughout, especially in Dallas. I worked at a place called Sullivan's Steakhouse. Deion Sanders would walk in there. He thought I had a New York accent, so he'd walk in and be like, "Where's New York? Where's New York?" Because I would always take care of Deion. Troy Aikman, the biggest person I've seen in my life, didn't even know they made people that size. Was Too Tall Jones. His head was twice the size of mine. So I got to see a lot of fun stuff, you know?
And have you ever met anyone that you've really been starstruck by?
Huh, really? Odd. No, I've met all these famous players. I've even put Drew Pearson's Super Bowl ring on my hand, and I really wasn't starstruck. That's odd, huh?
I saw you recently on Facebook with a photo of Roberto Duran.
Yeah, but I have pictures of Roberto Duran and my father in 1980 in Montreal, Canada during the Sugar Ray fights. I also have Roberto Duran carrying me when I was like 4. So I have like 90 pictures of Roberto Duran. So maybe I should have been starstruck, but I've known the guy my whole life, so no. But he's the champ. I'm a big fan.
Angelo, thank you so much for inviting me to Frank's Place for this interview. It's been fascinating. And instead of our usual cheers, we have a special bottle of wine. So if you can tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this is from Paso Robles, California. Seeing as you really enjoy California wines, I do too. But besides that, the majority of this wine is actually one of my favorite grapes. It's called Petit Syrah. Not very common in Panama, but it's got its own distinct color, very fruit forward, not sweet at all, low tannins, low acidity level, and might be a wine that anybody can drink. If I was going to give wine to somebody that doesn't drink wine, I would make it this wine, because this wine isn't offensive in any way. It's well-rounded and very easy to drink. Kind of like it a lot.
I can't wait to taste it. Cheers.
Cheers to you, and thank you.
Delicious. It's going to go perfectly with my linguine with house-made sausage.
Yes, it will.
Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you very much.
See you next time.
Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this video, make sure and subscribe and press the like button. If you'd like to see other videos, drop a comment and let us know what other topics you're interested in hearing about.